Foundations of Amateur Radio. In over a decade of writing a weekly article about all manner of different aspects of our hobby and community, I've never once talked about power connectors for your radio. It's so universal as to be invisible and rarely discussed, so much so that something you do out of habit makes another stop dead in their tracks and ask themselves why they never thought of it. Despite how you might feel at the time, there's no such thing as a stupid question. The other day, a fellow amateur, Dave VK6KV, asked about a power connector he'd seen at the local electronics store. That question started a group discussion about powering radios and how best to achieve that. The very first thing to discuss is that the vast majority of amateur radio transceivers expect a nominal voltage of 13.8 volt DC. That might sound like a strange requirement, but it's the voltage that comes from a fully charged 12-volt lead-acid battery, which is what many radios use as a power reference. The next thing to consider is that a transceiver can draw quite a bit of power when it's transmitting. My Yaesu FT857D user manual suggests 22 ampere, but I've never seen that in the decade it's been in my possession. When you purchase a radio, you'll likely discover that it either comes with bare wires or some random connector that doesn't fit anything else. In many cases, I've discovered that people cut off that connector and replace it with whatever standard they've come up with in their shack. But when they take their kit out on a field day or acquire a new radio, the problem starts all over again. Let me suggest a different approach. The Anderson Power Company, founded in 1877 by brothers Albert and Johann Anderson in Boston, Massachusetts, make a range of connectors called the Anderson Power Pole, and they come in a variety of ratings, sizes, shapes and colors. First introduced as a standard by the ARRL Emergency Communications course in December of 2000, after previously being adopted by amateur operators in California, the Anderson Power Pole PP1545 series was selected. The coordinator for Hawaii State Civil Defense Racers, or Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service, Ron, then Alpha Hotel 6 Romeo Hotel, now Kilo Hotel 6 Delta, has a detailed description on his QSL page on how this came about. As a result, the stackable, asymmetric, genderless plugs are in wide use within the amateur community. The plugs are designed to be joined together using various orientations, creating a unique connector to suit your purpose. The Amateur Radio Emergency Service, or ARES standard, is one such orientation, and before you adopt the Anderson Power Pole in your shack, make sure you use their orientation to avoid magic smoke from escaping your equipment. Picking a connector is just step one. When you acquire a new piece of 12-volt equipment, you can cut off the connector and replace it with the ARES Anderson Power Pole connector orientation. Many amateurs I know then throw away the unusable connector, or shove it into a box for later. Instead, what I do is terminate the plug that you just cut off in exactly the same way. Essentially, from a visual perspective, you've kept the power cable intact, but inserted a power pole join into the lead. As a result, you now have a standard power pole power lead, and you have a new power pole adapter to suit the new connector. For that reason alone, I tend to bring a box of spare red and black power pole connectors to any field day, and use the opportunity to spread the love around. As I said, the individual plugs come in a variety of colors. I have a selection of 11 in my shack, where for me a different color means a different voltage or purpose. For example, I've adopted green as the color for antenna radials. One challenge I had not been able to resolve until suggested by Ben VK6 November Charlie Bravo was how to avoid plugging a 12-volt power supply into something that expects, say, 7.5 volts. Color alone isn't sufficiently idiot-proof, especially in the dark. Ben suggested that I adjust the orientation of the plugs, preventing connectors of different colors to mate. Looking back, I can't understand why I didn't think of that in the decade I've been using them. I will note that there are other Anderson connectors in use. A popular one is the grey double connector used in portable solar installations and caravans. I'd recommend that you consider if you really want to plug your radio directly into a solar panel or not, and choose your connectors accordingly. Before you ask, to my knowledge, the Anderson Power Company doesn't know I exist, nor did I get compensated in any way to say Anderson Power Pole. It's the ARRL Emergency Services Standard, and I'm happy to advocate for its use everywhere I go. So, whether you're using bare wires, banana plugs, Molex connectors, or some other random barrel connectors, consider cutting the lead and inserting Anderson Power Pole connectors. When was the last time you had to do the 12-volt connector dance? I'm Onno, Victor Kilo 6, Foxtrot Lima, Alpha Bravo.